Bonjour à toutes et à tous et bienvenue dans une nouvelle vidéo sur Learn to French. Je m'appelle Eden et j'enseigne le français. Hello and welcome to another video on Learn to French. If you are new here, my name is Eden and I teach French. Aujourd'hui, nous allons regarder un petit guide de révision pour le niveau A1 en français. So today we are going to take a look at a simple A1 French study guide, and this can be very useful if you are studying for your DELF A1 exam. Alors, un guide A1, pourquoi? Why do I need an A1 French study guide? Well, first of all, there are many reasons for you to have an A1 French study guide, and the main reason would be if you are learning French by yourself and you would like to know exactly what you should learn and focus on the right things. So for example, if you are planning on taking the DELF A1 exam, then it's always good to have an overview of the most important things that you should learn. Comment utiliser ce guide? So how should you use this study guide? So of course, in this study guide, I am not going to detail every single thing that you have to learn because that would probably take a few hours and you might get bored, and it's not a good thing if you're bored and learning. I actually want you to do things by yourself. Here's why. I have worked with many kinds of students, and there is one thing that works every time with them during or after our classes. And that thing is when I ask them to do things by themselves. For example, if it's during our classes, if a student doesn't understand a word and they ask me, what is this word? I don't understand. Then instead of directly translating the word to them, I ask them to open their dictionary and simply look for the definition of this word. We can also work on tasks and homework, and I insist that they do things by themselves. They use the tools that they have online, but they do things by themselves. By doing so, the learner will be able to remember the steps that they took in order to get there, which makes memorization much better. So here are the steps that I would like you to take with these elements here that you're going to see. I am classifying everything into categories. In those categories, you will be able to see the key elements that you should learn. You can simply do your own research with these elements. Google is your friend. And organize your findings by category, for example. And lastly, you should work on exercises if you feel like it's not okay for you. So let's take a look at the different categories. The first one is le vocabulaire, so the vocabulary. Vocabulary includes the lexicon and the words that you are going to need by topic. La grammaire, grammar, of course, is what you should learn. This will give you the essential grammar points that you need in order to be able to communicate in French. The most important thing here with grammar is to be able to build sentences. So remember, grammar is a tool, not something that you have to learn just because you need to learn it. It's a tool that you can use to build clear sentences. La phonétique, phonetics. This will help you not only understand French, of course, you're going to need to know how we pronounce things, but also to be able to pronounce French. So this will help you understand and speak better. And lastly, la conjugaison. Conjugation is essential to communication in French. This is where you work with the verbs, the tenses, the moods, and how to use them exactly. So let's take a look at the vocabulary that you should know. Of course, I am linking the full A1 French study guide in the description of this video. That way you can simply take a look at it if you don't have the time to watch this video. Le vocabulaire. So the vocabulary. The first thing that you need to know is les nombres cardinaux, cardinal numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. La famille, l'apparence physique, so physical appearance, la maison, le foyer, so the house or the home, l'habillement, dressing, how to dress, so the vocabulary for clothes, for example. Les fruits, les légumes, les ingrédients de base dans la cuisine, so fruits, vegetables, basic ingredients in your kitchen. Les lieux publics et les commerces, public places and stores. Donc nous avons aussi les boissons, drinks, les nombres ordinaux, so we've seen les nombres cardinaux, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and les nombres ordinaux, Premier, deuxième, troisième, quatrième. So first, second, third, fourth, fifth. That's what we call ordinal numbers, les nombres ordinaux. Donc les émotions et les sentiments. So feelings and emotions. La météo, il fait beau, il fait chaud, the weather, basically. So the vocabulary regarding weather. Les vacances, vacation, les moyens de transport. Means of transportation. Les animaux domestiques, so pets, le chien, le chat. You can even go further and do farm animals, les animaux de la ferme. Basically the vocabulary that you can see in books for children, for example. And lastly, les jours de la semaine et les mois de l'année. So the days of the week and the months. This is essentially what you should learn for A1. Now let's take a look at grammar, la grammaire. Now grammar is going to give you the tools to build sentences in French. Se présenter, introducing yourself. Les articles définis et indéfinis. So definite and indefinite articles in French. Saluer et prendre congé, saying hello and saying goodbye. Le vouvoiement ou le tutoiement. So the use of vous and tu in French. La négation. Negation is also something that you should learn in A1. Le genre des noms. Gender of nouns. Nouns have genders in French. It can be either feminine or masculine. We don't have neutral. We have feminine or masculine. Les adjectifs qualificatifs, so adjectives that are used to describe nouns. Les articles partitifs. Partitive articles. This is something that I like to insist on in A1. Le pluriel des noms, plural of nouns. How do we make a noun plural? Dire la date et l'heure. How to say the date and the time. Exprimer le lieu et la localisation. Express the place and the location of something. Les prépositions chez et à. So the prepositions chez and à, how and when to use them. Parler de ses activités et de ses loisirs. How to talk about your activities and your hobbies. So this will gather the verbs jouer, faire, and how to use them exactly with the vocabulary that you've learned. COD et COI. So, complément d'objet direct et complément d'objet indirect. This is what we call direct object or indirect object in English. Les marqueurs temporels. Time markers. Demain, hier, aujourd'hui. So, tomorrow, today, how to locate yourself in time. Les principaux adverbes, so you should also know the most basic adverbs in French that are used frequently. Les adverbes de lieu, place adverbs, or adverbs of places. Les adverbes de quantité, quantity adverbs, un peu, beaucoup, etc. Le passé récent, so recent past, venir de quelque chose. So for example, je viens de manger, I just ate. This is what we call le passé récent. Now, the use of le futur proche. Le futur proche, you also need to learn how to compose, how to build le futur proche. Les pronoms toniques. Moi, toi, lui, elle. Tonic pronouns. L'utilisation de c'est. The use of c'est, so C apostrophe and the verb être. C'est. Parler de ses goûts. Talking about your tastes. J'aime, je n'aime pas, j'adore, etc. La comparaison, how to compare. Plus petit que, plus grand que, etc. L'utilisation du passé composé. You should learn in A1 how to start using passé composé in French. Demander et donner des informations. Asking and giving information. Les pronoms COD. Direct object pronouns. Les pronoms COI. Indirect object pronouns. Le futur simple. The use and how to form le futur simple. L'utilisation du futur simple et du futur proche. Now that you've learned futur simple and futur proche, you need to know when to use one or the other. Décrire une personne. What do you need to describe a person in French? Les pronoms en et i, so the pronouns en and i. Le pronom relatif qui, so the relative pronoun qui and how to use it. Same thing for que. L'imparfait de l'indicatif, the basics of imparfait, the imperfect tense in French. La négation, second part. So, We've seen la négation with ne and then verb and then pas. And part 2 should be ne, verb plus and ne, verb jamais. Comprendre un ordre ou des instructions. Understanding a command, an order, or instructions. La phonétique. So what should you learn for phonetics in A1 French? L'alphabet français et les accents. So of course, start with the alphabet and the accents in French. Les syllabes en français. How do you time syllables in French? How do you form syllables in French? La lettre et le son R. So the letter and the sound R in French. La lettre J et le son J. The letter J in French and the sound J, like jouer. La prononciation des lettres en fin de mot. So since French has a lot of silent letters, especially at the end of words, you need to work and study on la prononciation des lettres, so letters pronunciation. How do you pronounce letters? Most of all, how do you pronounce them at the end of a word? So this is a really big chapter. Les voyelles nasales, so nasal vowels. En, un, on, un. La prononciation de GN, so the pronunciation of GN together, which gives ny, ny. Like for example, se baigner, baigner. The letters S and SS, so basically the pronunciation of the letter S in a word. It can be either the sound Z or the sound S. La prononciation de la lettre G, and same thing for the letter C. So the pronunciation of the letter G and C in French, which can be different according to what is after G or what is after C. I have some videos on the pronunciation of the letter G and C. You can also check that in my pronunciation playlist. Et enfin, la conjugaison. And lastly, conjugation in French. The first thing that you should learn is how to conjugate the most basic verbs. The first verbs that you're going to use to introduce yourself. Être, avoir, s'appeler, and venir. Être, to be, avoir, to have, s'appeler, to call oneself, venir, to come, conjugated in the present tense, le présent de l'indicatif. And then it's always good for you to know about moods and tenses. So conjugation moods and tenses in French, how do they work? That way you have an overview from the beginning. Of course, you don't need to know how to conjugate everything. You just need to know what is a conjugation mood and what is a conjugation tense. Les trois groupes de verbes. We have 3 group verbs in French. The verbs that end in ER, so this is what we call the first group verbs, the regular verbs that end in IR, second group verbs, and the third group verbs. La conjugaison des verbes du premier groupe et du deuxième groupe au présent. So how to conjugate first group verbs and second group verbs in the present tense. This will help you be familiar with French conjugation. Start with the regular ones. And then after, you can go with the third group verbs and memorize them. Les verbes irréguliers au présent. So, irregular verbs at the present tense. So, third group verbs and irregular verbs. Les verbes pronominaux au présent. Verbs that are going to use a pronoun before the verb. And we have a lot of them in French, so you need to figure out how to conjugate them in the present tense. Les verbes faire et aller au présent. The verbs faire, to do, and aller, to go, in the present tense. Le passé composé et le participe passé. Well, now that you've learned the present tense, you can head over and start expressing yourself in the past tense. And in the past tense, the first tense that you're going to learn is le passé composé. Passé composé, compound past, composed past. This means that you're going to use 2 elements, an auxiliary verb and a past participle. Le futur proche, near future, le futur simple, the future tense. Le futur proche is aller plus infinitive, and le futur simple needs a whole new conjugation. So it's kind of like when to use going to and will in English. L'imparfait, the imperfect tense. L'impératif présent, the imperative mood, present tense. So this is useful for instructions, commands, orders, etc. So that's basically the things that you should master for A1. and before you move on to A2. Of course, if you would like to know more or simply have the list in front of you again and feel comfortable, then you can simply head over to the link in the description of this video. Cette vidéo est maintenant terminée. If you like this kind of content, of course, feel free to like this video, subscribe to my channel, or leave a comment down below. Merci beaucoup et je vous dis à très bientôt pour une nouvelle vidéo sur Learn to French. Au revoir!